It is the bank that helped build the American West. From hauling gold across the country in the 1800s to growing into one of the biggest banks in the world. Wells Fargo is a legend in finance, but it also orchestrated one of the biggest scandals in modern banking, creating millions of fake accounts, and came close to collapse, until one outsider stepped in to save it, Charles Sharf. The 1850s, America pulses with change. Railroads snake across the land. Steamboats churn rivers. Factories hum in the north. The nation stretches from Atlantic to Pacific. Opportunity waits everywhere. But distance remains a barrier. Mail takes weeks. Money vanishes on trails. And the post office monopoly charges high fees for slow service. This chaos sets the stage for private express companies. They step in to carry packages, gold, and cash faster and safer. Henry Wells begins as a freight agent in upstate New York, overcoming a stutter to build reliable routes from Albany to Buffalo. William G. Fargo starts as a messenger, sharp and ambitious, rising quickly to partner with Wells in expanding westward. By 1850, they see the need for consolidation amid cutthroat competition. They join forces with John Butterfield, a stagecoach expert known for his conservative approach and wealth. Together, the trio merges their firms to form American Express. Capitalized at $150,000, they focus on secure transport from New York to the Midwest. American Express takes off fast, with offices spreading and profits climbing from reliable deliveries of goods and money. Their network dominates the East and Midwest, earning trust in an unreliable world.
Back then, American Express was killing it, so the next logical move was obvious: head west to California. Wells and Fargo pushed like hell for it, but Butterfield shut them down hard.
Butterfield calls the West too risky, too distant to control from New York. The board sides with him, leaving Wells and Fargo frustrated and the opportunity hanging. But the opportunity is just too good to miss. So Wells and Fargo decide to act in secret. Behind Butterfield's back, Wells and Fargo charter a new company on March 18, 1852. Wells, Fargo and Company launches with $300,000, aimed straight at California. They keep their American Express roles to avoid suspicion, and their timing couldn't be more perfect. The California Gold Rush starts in January 1848, when James W. Marshall finds gold flakes at Sutter's Mill in Coloma. Word spreads fast. By December, President Polk confirms it in Congress. The news hits like wildfire. People from everywhere chase fortune. Nearly 300,000 arrive by 1855. Americans rush from the east. Immigrants sail from China, Europe, Latin America. They walk overland trails or risk disease around Cape Horn. San Francisco explodes from 500 people in 1847 to 36,000 by 1852. Miners fight over claims. No banks, no mail, no safety. Gold dust flows, but getting it east or spending it safely stays impossible. It is a perfect opportunity for an express business. Wells Fargo sees the gap. They offer to haul gold dust, mail, and supplies. They buy dust at fair rates, issue drafts redeemable in cities. The model fits perfectly. In a place without roads or law, speed and trust mean survival.
In the early 1850s, when bandits robbed a Wells Fargo stage, they went after them hard. They hired local posses, put up big cash rewards, sometimes hundreds in gold, and often rode out themselves to track the outlaws through the Sierra Hills.
When they caught the robbers and thieves, they make sure the gold was recovered, and sometimes they even just killed them. The order to send a message that they should not mess with Wells Fargo.
They publicized every capture through the camps. Miners heard the stories and realized Wells Fargo wasn't just another outfit. They were the ones who hunted you down if you crossed them. That brutal enforcement built the unbreakable trust that defined the company for decades.
By 1855, 56 branches operate across California. They handle gold shipments, mail delivery, and loans. They join staging routes for faster transport. But their biggest test is just around the corner. February 1855 brings a storm to California that no one sees coming at first. Over-speculation in railroads and distant eastern investments has fueled a dangerous boom for years. When Page, Bacon & Company's parent bank in St. Louis fails, the news races across the Pacific by steamship. Panic ignites. Nearly 200 businesses fail across San Francisco. Courts shut. Streets turn chaotic. Confidence evaporates. Many banks and express firms close forever. Wells Fargo stands small among giants. It faces the same storm. Crowds demand their gold. And if Wells Fargo can't honor them, the company will fail. John Quincy Jackson runs the Auburn branch. At just 20-something, he arrived in 1852. He handles huge gold shipments monthly. Miners know him well. Jackson builds ties in the mining camp crossroads. When panic hits, crowds surround his office.
It was a dangerous moment, so he called in his local friends and miners and using their reputation and presence to back up his promise. No violence erupted, and the crowd dispersed without forcing a run or closure at his location.
If that branch had collapsed, it would have triggered a chain reaction and Wells Fargo would fall. Miners trusted him because he lived among them, shipped their gold faithfully, and never backed down. His quick thinking in Auburn turned potential disaster into proof of Wells Fargo's strength.
The 1860s bring massive change to America. The Civil War rages in the East, tearing the nation apart over slavery and states' rights. While battles rage, the West opens wide. Railroads speed westward expansion. Immigrants and families chase land and opportunity. Wells Fargo seizes the moment and begins to buy out smaller companies. For $1.5 million, Wells Fargo unites nearly all Western stagecoach routes. No rival stands against them. They dominate mail, freight, and passenger transport from Missouri to the Pacific.
You know, as Wells Fargo was hauling all that gold dust and cash across the rough terrain, miners needed somewhere safe to stash it overnight or while waiting for the next shipment east. So the express offices just naturally turning to vaults. Pretty soon, boom, they're running a bank on the side. It wasn't planned, but it just made so much sense to do it. By late 1906, Wells Fargo proves once again that it is trustworthy and reliable. After surviving a massive earthquake that rocks San Francisco, the bank reopens quickly. It honors every depositor. Confidence returns. Deposits surge from $16 million to $35 million in 18 months. But in America's rapidly changing economy, empires rise on gold dust one day and collapse into ruin the next. Nothing lasts forever when fortune turns. And for Wells Fargo, that day is just around the corner. By the early 1900s, Wells Fargo stands as a Western powerhouse. Express routes span thousands of miles. The company thrives on trust built since the gold rush. Offices number in the hundreds. But one man is about to disrupt all of that. E.H. Harriman is a railroad baron. Born in 1848 to a modest family, he quits school young. He starts as an errand boy on Wall Street. By 22, he owns a seat on the New York Stock Exchange. He buys broken railroads, rebuilds them with precision, sells for huge gains. In 1897, he takes control of the struggling Union Pacific. He revives it, adds Southern Pacific, controls vast networks. His fortune climbs to $150 to $200 million.
Harriman was this tough, detail-obsessed guy. People called him the Napoleon of railroads. When he got his hands on Wells Fargo through Southern Pacific stock, he looked at the dual setup and said, "This is inefficient." Express fit perfectly with his rail empire, and he wanted to separate out the banking business from Wells Fargo.
Harriman orchestrates the split in 1905. He strikes a deal with banker Isaiah W. Hellman. Wells Fargo Banking merges with Nevada National Bank. The new Wells Fargo Nevada National Bank opens on April 22nd. Hellman takes the presidency. Harriman joins the board. Express operations shift to New York headquarters. They continue as a separate entity. The timing couldn't be more impeccable as a monumental event is on the horizon, and it will fundamentally change the fate of Wells Fargo. World War I erupts in Europe in 1914. By 1917, America joins the fight. U.S. troops ship overseas. Factories churn supplies. The economy bends to war. Prices climb. Resources grow scarce. Government seeks tighter control. Private companies face new pressure. The express industry, which had defined American logistics for decades, now stands at the edge of transformation. Wells Fargo and its competitors operate vast networks of rail, stage, and truck routes, moving parcels, military shipments, and urgent mail with speed and reliability.
You know, up until then, private rivalry was actually a strength. It drove innovation, kept prices sharp, and pushed everyone to deliver faster and better. But when the war hit and the nation needed seamless, unified delivery, that same competition just turned into waste. Duplicated routes, delays, and inefficiency nobody could afford anymore.
Treasury Secretary 𝗿𝗂𝘀𝐿, a determined and forceful figure, takes the lead. He insists on one national express system to support the war effort without duplication or delay. By May, agreement arrives. American Railway Express takes over. Wells Fargo surrenders its routes, equipment, and operations. The era of Wells Fargo as an express giant closes forever. The stagecoach fades into memory. Offices empty. Routes belong to the new agency. Wells Fargo now survives only as a bank. The early 1920s roar with energy in America. World War I ends in 1918. Soldiers return home. Factories switch from war to peace. The stock market climbs month after month. Banking explodes across the country. Branches open in every town. Mergers create larger institutions. Wells Fargo emerges from the war changed. The express business is gone. Nationalization strips away routes and identity. The bank stands alone in San Francisco. Frederick L. Lippman rose from the ranks inside Wells Fargo. Lippman inherits a bank scarred by the 1907 panic. He realizes Wells Fargo needs more capital to weather these storms without risking overextension, and he soon finds a solution. Founded in 1893 by Isaiah W. Hellman, Union Trust Bank was one of San Francisco's oldest trust institutions. It holds deep capital reserves. It specializes in estates, investments, and secure management for families and businesses.
Consolidation of the Wells Fargo Nevada National Bank and the Union Trust Company of San Francisco has been effected according to the San Francisco Chronicle today.
On March 31st, Wells Fargo Nevada National Bank and Union Trust combine. The new entity becomes Wells Fargo Bank and Union Trust Company. The late 1920s unfold as a golden, breathless time in America. The stock market climbs higher every day, fueled by speculation and easy credit that draws ordinary people into the game of buying shares on borrowed money. Then, October 1929 crashes down. The stock market collapses.
In the 3 months ended on November 30th, the value of listed securities in the United States underwent a greater depreciation than in any similar period in the nation's history.
Frederick L. Lippman holds the presidency through the crisis. He keeps the bank highly liquid. Reserves stay strong. Wells Fargo stands as a rock amid the wreckage. But a powerful rival rises in the West, Bank of America. It began as Bank of Italy in 1904, founded by Italian immigrant A.P. Giannini. He serves small businesses, immigrants, and working people. Branches spread everywhere. Giannini makes banking simple and welcoming. He wins fierce loyalty. By the 1930s, Bank of America dominated California. Branches number in the hundreds. In the 1950s, 𝗷𝘂𝘀𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐿 III takes the helm. His grandfather, Isaias W. Hellman, helped shape Wells Fargo in the early days. His father guided the Union Trust merger. To compete with Bank of America, he knows he has to do something drastic. The 1950s explode with consumerism in America. World War II ends. Soldiers return home. Families move to suburbs. Cars fill driveways. Women enter the workforce in greater numbers. The economy booms. CEO 𝗷𝘂𝘀𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐿 III sees Bank of America dominating California with branches on every corner, and he knows Wells Fargo must respond. He pushes hard for retail banking. Everyday accounts, more branches, more loans for ordinary people.
When a company is that big, you don't have the time to deal with the risk of building something organically. So the obvious step is to grow through acquisitions.
But Hellman envisions something bolder, and he lays his eyes on an impossible target. American Trust begins in 1854 as a solid San Francisco bank. It focuses on both commercial and retail accounts. It grows steadily over the decades. By the 1950s, it holds 102 branches across California. It serves consumers, small businesses, and families.
Here's the thing. Wells Fargo was this focused commercial bank, not big in retail branches back then. Yet they swallowed American Trust, a bigger retail outfit with 102 branches. It was a bold move that flipped the script and turned them into California's second largest bank.
Growth continues steadily through the 1960s and 1970s. The bank stays solid. By the end of the 1970s, Wells Fargo has assets of around $11 to $15 billion, ranks as one of the top 20 to 30 U.S. banks, and holds a strong second-place position in California with hundreds of branches. But what happens next will put everything in jeopardy. The late 1970s and early 1980s bring a restless energy to American banking. Inflation squeezes families and businesses alike. Deregulation opens new doors and new dangers. Banks compete fiercely for deposits and loans. Wells Fargo grows steadily through these years, but pressure builds quietly inside. Employees feel the strain of rising quotas. Management pushes for more business. The surface looks calm. Beneath it, something is about to break. It is late 1978 in Beverly Hills. Lloyd Benjamin Ben Lewis, the operations manager at Wells Fargo's Beverly Drive branch, is a trusted insider. He has worked there for years, handling accounts with precision. A friend introduces him to Harold J. Smith, the flashy boxing promoter running Muhammad Ali Professional Sports Inc. Smith is staging big fights, but desperately needs cash to cover costs and impress investors. He even pays Ali a fee to license his name, though Ali stays hands-off. He starts small, concealing Smith's bad checks to keep accounts open. The risk feels low. The rewards feel huge. Over 2 years, he escalates, creating phony debit and credit receipts, manipulating 13 Beverly Hills accounts and 1 in Santa Monica. Money flows to fake companies tied to Smith's promotions. Lewis pockets over $300,000 in kickbacks. The fraud totals $21.3 million. No one notices. Routine checks miss it entirely. Then, on January 23, 1981, a routine audit uncovers discrepancies. The $21.3 million loss stuns the industry. It ranks as the largest bank embezzlements in U.S. history at the time.
The Wells Fargo National Bank, which is charged that a group of sports promoters stole $21.3 million from its Beverly Hills branch, refused today to discuss details of the alleged theft and said that it had sealed court documents detailing the purported fraud.
At the time, the CEO of Wells Fargo is Richard 𝗂𝐨𝐈. The scandal humiliates him publicly. 𝗂𝐨𝐈 orders immediate changes. Mandatory 2-week vacations begin for all employees. Fraudsters can no longer hide behind constant presence. The bank tightens controls across every branch.
That 1981 embezzlement was a wake-up call. A single employee siphoned $21.3 million over years. Huge for the time.
But soon, another disaster awaits. Except this time, it will give Wells Fargo the perfect opportunity to repair their image. In the early 1980s, Wells Fargo was growing fast. After Richard 𝗂𝐨𝐈's abrupt resignation in late 1982, 𝗁 𝐷𝐿 beccomes the new CEO. He grew up in Houston, Texas, earned his BA in economics from USC in 1956, and built his career in banking at Union Bank in Los Angeles under 𝗵𝗂𝐿. As a new CEO, he plans to slash costs, close branches, cut thousands of jobs, and refocus on California retail banking to take Wells Fargo to the next level. But little does he know, Wells Fargo will soon face a crisis unlike any of his predecessors experienced. September 12, 1983. At the West Hartford, Connecticut depot, guard Victor Manuel Garena made his move. He is a Puerto Rican separatist with Los Macheteros. He drugged 2 co-workers with chloroform. He bound them with duct tape. Garena loaded $7.2 million into bags. He drove off in a stolen Buick. The heist was the largest cash robbery in U.S. history.
A Puerto Rican terrorist group has claimed responsibility for last year's $7 million robbery from the Wells Fargo Armored Service Corporation in West Hartford, Connecticut.
That White Eagle heist was shocking. $7.2 million just gone in one night. It goes to show how an inside man could exploit trust.
For CEO 𝗁 𝐷𝐿, it is a huge blow as the firm is trying to recover from the embezzlement scandal. He pledged total cooperation with the FBI, handing over every scrap of depot footage and employee records. Agents launched a massive manhunt, raiding safe houses across Puerto Rico and the U.S. mainland. In 1985, 17 Macheteros members were arrested in Hartford. Segarra Palmer got 55 years. Others, like Norman Ramirez Talavera, faced trial. Garena fled to Cuba.
What started out as a disaster turned out to be a huge win for Wells Fargo's PR, just like how Wells Fargo started out a century ago. They will hunt down anyone who steals their money.
As the new CEO, 𝗁𝗁 moves quickly. He launches a fierce cost-cutting campaign. Over 100 branches close, thousands of jobs disappear, international operations shrink. The focus turns inward, back to core California markets. The competition only grows fiercer. 𝗁𝗁 sees the math clearly. Efficiency alone won't save them. Scale is the answer. The industry is consolidating rapidly, and organic growth moves too slowly to keep pace. Now he just needs to find a bank to acquire, and he knows just where to look. Crocker National Bank is one of the prominent banks in California. Founded in 1870 by Charles Crocker, one of the Big Four railroad barons who drove the construction of the Central Pacific Railroad. Crocker grows into a powerful Southern California institution. It has hundreds of branches and good connections with wealthy customers and businesses in the growing state economy. But the bank runs into serious trouble. It loses a lot of money on bad loans it gave to countries in Latin America during the debt crisis of the early 1980s. The British company Midland Bank, which bought Crocker earlier, now sees it as a problem because it reduces profits. In the 1980s, With fewer rules on banking, Crocker becomes an easy target for someone to buy.
Wells Fargo and Company said today that it would buy the Crocker National Corporation for about $1.08 billion, creating the nation's 10th largest bank, with assets of more than $40 billion.
Reichhardt seizes the moment. Midland, eager to divest, accepts Wells Fargo's $1.1 billion offer, a bargain priced at only 1.3 times book value in an industry where premiums often run much higher. The acquisition of Crocker National Bank transforms Wells Fargo overnight. The merger nearly doubles the bank's size, pushing its assets well past $50 billion and expanding its branch network from a modest presence to hundreds more across Southern California.
These days, even banks like Wells Fargo run on automation and AI. As a YouTuber, I'm using the same tools to run my business. Recently, I was building a landing page for my YouTube training program. Normally that means outlining the page, thinking through structure, writing copy, moving blocks around, and then spending way too much time tweaking details. This time, I used Cintra.ai, which is the sponsor of today's video. So I told one of their AI agents, Connett, what I wanted, a simple landing page, and it just built it. Layout, structure, copy, sections, and debugging, all done in under 10 minutes. So I had a working website I could actually use. What I like about Cintra is that it's not one single chatbot pretending to do everything. You get over a dozen specialized AI helpers, copywriting, business development, SEO, social media, even customer support, all in one platform. You're not prompting endlessly. You're choosing a role and letting it execute. If you want to use the same AI tools I'm using to build and run my business, go to Cintra.ai/Phineas and use code Phineas for a limited time 72% off all plans. That's Cintra.ai/Phineas, code Phineas. Build, grow, and scale your business with a team of AI employees from Cintra.
The early 1990s bring a time of big changes to American banking and the wider economy. Banks start merging at a fast pace to get bigger, cut costs, and compete better. Wall Street cheers the trend because larger banks promise higher profits and more market power. After the successful Crocker merger in 1986, Wells Fargo keeps growing stronger under Carl Reichardt's tough leadership. Reichhardt retires at the end of 1994. Paul Hazen, who has worked closely with Reichhardt for years and helped plan the Crocker deal, steps up as chairman and CEO.
Paul Hazen had been Reichardt's right hand for over a decade, always thinking 3 moves ahead while everyone else reacted. When he took the top job in '94, he had this hunger to make Wells Fargo untouchable.
The industry surges forward in a frenzy of consolidation. Rivals swell larger every month. Hazen knows Wells Fargo cannot stand still. To keep its momentum, to claim new territories and new customers, the bank must expand aggressively. Now, he just needs an opportunity. First Interstate Bancorp stands as one of the biggest banking companies in the mid-1990s. It started in 1958 as a spin-off from Transamerica Corporation. By the 1990s, it ranks as the nation's 8th largest bank holding company. Headquartered in Los Angeles, it operates hundreds of branches across 13 Western and Sun Belt states. Its main business focuses on retail banking, commercial loans, mortgages, and other services for individuals and businesses. But in the early 1990s, First Interstate struggled with bad real estate loans during California's recession. Despite strong management, the bank soon becomes target of takeovers, and Wells Fargo is among them. Hazen knows First Interstate will never sell willingly. The only option left is a hostile takeover. In October 1995, he launches a bid starting at about $10.8 billion in stock. First Interstate fights back at first, seeking other partners as white knights. But Hazen doubles down, rising the bid to $11.6 billion. And First Interstate finally gives in.
Bowing to what appeared to be insurmountable financial pressure, First Interstate Band Corporation said yesterday that it was now negotiating to sell itself to Wells Fargo and Company.
With First Interstate under its belt, Wells Fargo nearly doubles in size, surging from roughly $50 to $60 billion in assets to about $108 to $116 billion, with a much broader network across 13 Western and Sunbelt states. The botched acquisition of First Interstate in 1996 creates major trouble for Wells Fargo.
It was pure hubris. They tried to do everything overnight. The computers crashed. At the same time, they fired the friendly staff that customers actually liked. What started as a bold move to grow ended up hurting the bank's reputation, profits, and customer trust.
The Wells Fargo First Interstate merger showed how quickly a failed integration can ruin even a strong bank. Seeking size doesn't always win in banking. People chased merger trend without thinking about the real costs. The cultural clashes, system failures, and lost customers. It was a classic example of smart executives making dumb mistakes by following the trend.
Paul Hazen faces heavy criticism for the failed integration. As CEO, he takes much of the blame for rushing the process and not planning carefully enough. But he still hopes maybe another acquisition will help solve Wells Fargo's problem. But this time, he needs a savior. Norwest Corporation, based in Minneapolis, stands out as a strong and growing bank in the late 1990s. Founded in 1929, it builds a solid business model focused on retail banking and customer relationships. Under CEO 𝗵𝗂𝘁𝐿, who takes the top job in 1993, Norwest emphasizes cross-selling, getting customers to use multiple products like mortgages, loans, insurance, and investments. When Wells Fargo struggles after the First Interstate mess, its stock price drops and it becomes vulnerable. For 𝗵𝗂𝘁𝐿, this may just be the opportunity to take over a bank and take his cross-selling strategy even further.
The Norwest Corporation and Wells Fargo and Company agreed to merge yesterday in a $34 billion deal, the latest in a string of blockbuster unions that have created a clear cadre of giants.
The two companies announced a merger of equals in 1998, valued at about $34 billion. But truly, it was a takeover by Norwest. Norwest is the legal survivor, but the combined bank keeps the more famous Wells Fargo name and moves headquarters to San Francisco.
The Norwest-Wells Fargo merger was full of irony. Norwest, the smaller but more successful player, effectively took over the historic Wells Fargo, yet the famous Stagecoach name survived while Norwest's identity faded.
Wells Fargo went from being the aggressive acquirer to the one being acquired. This deal completely changed Wells Fargo's direction and culture. It goes to show how quickly fortunes can flip in banking. Yesterday's powerhouse can become tomorrow's takeover target.
In the mid-2000s, low interest rates and easy credit fuel a massive housing boom in the United States. Wall Street banks dive deep into the market by packaging risky subprime mortgages into complex securities and selling them to investors worldwide. Wells Fargo also benefits from the housing surge as one of the nation's largest mortgage lenders, originating billions in home loans during this time. But Wells Fargo focuses on traditional lending to customers it knows well, often holding loans on its own books rather than securitizing and offloading them. It avoids the heaviest exposure to the most toxic subprime products that other big banks chase for quick fees.
The nation's fourth largest bank reported a $393 million first quarter loss and has been forced to cut its dividend and seek a $7 billion cash injection to make up for a poorly timed expansion of its mortgage business.
Wachovia, a major East Coast bank headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina, grew quickly through acquisitions and became the fourth largest bank in the U.S. by assets. But by September 2008, amid the broader financial panic, Wachovia suffers a silent run on deposits and stands on the edge of collapse. CEO John Stumpf at Wells Fargo sees an opportunity to expand eastward. He enters a fierce bidding war with Citigroup, which initially brokers a government-backed deal to take over Wachovia's banking operations for about $2.2 billion with FDIC loss-sharing support. Stumpf pushes hard, offering a no-assistance, all-stock bid that values Wachovia higher and keeps the company intact. Stumpf wins the battle in October 2008 when Wachovia accepts Wells Fargo's $15.1 billion all-stock offer after Citigroup's deal falls apart. The merger closes in December 2008, making Wells Fargo the country's fourth largest bank by assets and creating a coast-to-coast presence. Wells Fargo soon discovers Wachovia holds about $100 billion in toxic assets. These bad loans lead to huge write-downs and losses in the following years, straining the bank's capital. After the 2008 crisis, Wells Fargo and other major banks received government support through programs like TARP to stabilize their balance sheets and manage toxic assets. CEO John Stumpf, determined to boost performance and regain momentum, doubles down on cross-selling, pushing employees to sell more products per customer. He sees it as the key to higher profits and customer loyalty. Little does he know, this intense focus on sales will backfire, as Wells Fargo is about to suffer the worst catastrophe in its recent history. In the mid-2000s, under CEO John Stumpf, who took over in 2007, the bank built its success on a strong cross-selling model inherited from Norwest, aiming to sell multiple products like checking accounts, credit cards, loans, and insurance to every customer.
There was the slogan called 8 is great. It really was about the goal of averaging 8 products per household, which helped drive profits and earn praise from Wall Street.
This created a high-stress environment where meeting targets became the top priority over customer needs. Many employees felt trapped between losing their jobs or bending rules to hit goals.
Claudia Ponce de Leon is a branch manager in Pomona, California. In early 2011, facing relentless quotas, she begins to see employees opening unauthorized checking and savings accounts for customers without their knowledge, sometimes transferring $25 from real accounts to fund them and meet daily goals. In one instance, a banker forged a customer's signature on an application and issued a debit card with a simple PIN like 0000 to activate the fake account, avoiding detection. Ponce de Leon called the ethics hotline in January 2011 to report the fraud, but instead of action, she was fired 3 weeks later.
Back in 2013, I walked into a Wells Fargo branch to open a business account. The employee started my paperwork, but stepped away for 3 minutes. Another banker swooped in, pulled me to her office, and started setting up the account for me. The first guy stormed back, lashing out at her passive-aggressively for stealing his client. I thought, damn, these employees were cutthroat and competitive.
This pattern echoes elsewhere. Colin in San Diego, a Colorado manager in mid-2010, enrolls homeless individuals off the street to pad quotas. What begins as isolated survival tactics spreads like a virus by 2011, ensnaring thousands in a web of deceit.
Wells Fargo is being hit with a $190 million fine for creating fake customer accounts that regulators say were illegal.
The scandal first gained real attention in late 2013 when the Los Angeles Times published an investigation exposing intense pressure on bankers and managers to meet aggressive, sometimes impossible quotas. The article detailed how employees opened unauthorized accounts to hit goals and earn bonuses, quoting workers who described the culture as a pressure cooker. By September 2016, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency and the City of Los Angeles fined Wells Fargo $185 million for creating about 1.5 million unauthorized deposit accounts and over 500,000 credit cards between 2011 and 2015. The bank also refunded $2.6 million in fees to affected customers and admitted firing more than 5,300 employees involved in the fraud.
The fake accounts scandal stemmed from a toxic sales culture where cross-selling quotas were treated as sacred even when they were unrealistic. It happened because leadership prioritized short-term metrics over ethics. It created an environment where cheating became the path to survival. The scale, millions of accounts, showed how deeply the problem was embedded.
The fake account scandal explodes in 2016 and brings heavy consequences for Wells Fargo. By late 2016, the company's market value falls by billions and profits suffer as regulators watch every move.
Wells Fargo is making changes to make things right.
Tonight, Wells Fargo doing damage control once again, refunding customers for monthly add-on charges applied without their full permission or understanding.
CEO John Stumpf tries to calm the storm by apologizing publicly, promising changes, and saying the bank will fix its sales practices.
What I said yesterday is that John Stumpf will be out by the end of the year, and he is indeed out by the end of the year.
Stumpf steps down as chairman and CEO, and the board forces him to give up $41 million in stock awards as punishment.
John Stumpf's resignation felt ironic. He had been the face of Wells Fargo's success, turning it into a profitable giant through cross-selling. But the same aggressive strategy he championed led to the fraud that destroyed trust. His downfall showed how quickly a leader's greatest strength can become his biggest weakness.
In February 2018, Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen imposes an unprecedented growth cap on Wells Fargo.
Welcome back. The shackles on Wells Fargo. The Federal Reserve has slapped Wells Fargo with an unprecedented punishment for years of misconduct, including the creation of millions of fake user accounts. The punishments imposed on Janet Yellen's last day as chairman of the Fed will restrict growth at Wells to under $2 trillion in assets, pressure the removal of 4 Wells Fargo board members, and require the submission of detailed plans to remedy Wells Fargo's wrongdoing.
The cap was a rare punishment meant to force real change. When the news hit, Wells Fargo's stock almost collapsed. Investors worry that the bank may never be able to compete again.
After Stumpf leaves, Tim Sloan, a longtime insider who had been chief operating officer, becomes CEO in October 2016. He promises to rebuild trust by changing sales practices, improving risk management, and working closely with regulators. But the problem is so deep that he resigns after less than 3 years because he simply can't fix the rotting core of Wells Fargo. In 2019, the bank keeps losing ground to competitors, and its reputation remains damaged. Without a major turnaround, it will be dead or getting swallowed by lesser banks. Someone must step in to save it, and that person will have to come from outside the company. Charlie Sharf is a seasoned banker with a reputation for being a turnaround guy. Growing up in Westfield, New Jersey, Sharf experiences a stable suburban life where his father's job as a stockbroker introduces him to the world of investments. Starting at age 13, he takes summer jobs in Manhattan brokerages, handling back-office tasks like data entry and working in vaults, which teach him the basics of hard work and attention to detail. After graduating from Johns Hopkins University, Sharf joins commercial credit in 1987 as an assistant to Jamie Dimon, who quickly becomes his mentor during aggressive expansion efforts under Sandy Weill. He follows Dimon through major deals, including the acquisition of Primerica and the creation of Citigroup in 1998, where he rises to CFO of Salomon Smith Barney at just 30 years old.
He was an extremely loyal person. When Diamond was fired and had to go to Bank One in Chicago, Sharf went there too, becoming CFO and later CEO of its retail division, and his style is very similar to Jamie Dimon's. By 2017, Sharf serves as CEO and chairman of BNY Mellon, where he streamlines operations in custody banking and asset management for global clients. After a track record of successful turnarounds, he catches the attention of Wells Fargo's board amid ongoing fallout from the fake account scandal and the Federal Reserve's asset cap. For them, Sharf may just be the one to save the bank from extinction. Charlie Sharf takes over as CEO of Wells Fargo in October 2019.
So the new Wells Fargo CEO will be Charlie Sharf, who of course is currently the chairman and CEO of Bank of New York Mellon. This breaking just moments ago. He will be CEO and president. He'll be a member of the board at Wells Fargo.
It will be one of the toughest jobs in banking after the fake account scandal shattered trust and triggered massive fines. He faces a broken culture from aggressive sales pressures, ongoing regulatory scrutiny, and a strict Federal Reserve asset cap of $1.95 trillion that limits growth.
The bank struggled with outdated risk controls, compliance failures, and low employee morale. Many wonder if the 170-year-old institution could recover at all.
Sharf launches sweeping changes to address the root causes of the scandal and restore stability. He brings in new leadership from outside and fires 55,000 people. It's one of the biggest cleanups ever. He exited unprofitable areas like parts of mortgage servicing and invests heavily in risk management with thousands of new professionals and advanced monitoring tools. He overhauls performance reviews to emphasize ethics over sales quotas and simplifies operations to reduce complexity.
You can clearly see Jamie Dimon's influence on him. Sharf's approach was methodical and uncompromising. He focused on fixing the basics, risks, controls, and culture before chasing growth and profit.
After several years of consistent effort, the Federal Reserve lifts Wells Fargo's the asset cap on June 3rd, 2025.
This was imposed all the way back when Janet Yellen was still the Fed chair, if I believe, right? That's correct?
Correct.
7 years, the idea that this asset cap basically meant your balance sheet can't go above this amount, which basically means you effectively can't grow. If you're a bank, you basically can't grow.
This milestone ends 7 years of strict limitations on the bank's growth. Wells Fargo resolves multiple regulatory consent orders and strengthens its financial performance. By 2025, the bank's total assets surpass $2 trillion for the first time, marking significant balance sheet growth.
Shares up about 3.3% in pre-market trading. The company did raise its medium-term target for return on tangible common equity to 17 to 18%. I believe that's why the shares are reacting so favorably.
Charlie Sharf's leadership transforms the bank from a constrained institution into one ready for expansion. Today, Wells Fargo stands in a solid position to pursue organic growth and serve customers more effectively.
The story of Wells Fargo really is the story of America. It began as a frontier lifeline during the gold rush and grew into a banking giant that mirrored the nation's expansion and ambition. Through mergers, scandals, and recoveries, the bank has shown the same resilience and reinvention that define American enterprise. Under Charlie Sharf, it has once again proven that even after deep wounds, an institution can rebuild trust and reclaim its place in the economy.
However, success doesn't last forever. In today's fast-moving, interconnected financial world, a single serious misstep could quickly unravel even the biggest bank in America.